Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Desert Underground. This week, while taking some time out from canyoneering in the Grand Valley, waiting for the snow to finish melting and the trails to dry up some, we're exploring the mystery of an oddly placed fixed rope in Colorado National Monument that I recently stumbled across. You know, it's not uncommon to find old pieces of rigging, webbing, cord, or rope around tree or rock anchors in Colorado National Monument on climbing or canyoneering routes to facilitate rope descents to vertical spaces. In my frequent travels around C&M in a vertical capacity, I often do not come across fixed ropes that are hanging below the cliff's edge, left behind and attached to an anchor. And that's mainly for two reasons. One, Colorado National Monument regulations state that fixed ropes may not be left in place for longer than 24 hours. And two, outside of expert climbers reascending a rope to start off where they finished climbing from the previous day, there really is no good reason to leave long, expensive ropes behind in a national monument. Leaving ropes behind can also have the unintended consequence of causing alarm in park visitors and officials alike, both wondering if something is amiss or whether someone needs rescuing or recovering. Fast forward to Columbine Springs route. I thought at this time that maybe I was the first or one of the first people to rappel off this cliff face, as I found little indication of others coming before me. But I was wrong. Less than 50 yards away from where I descended down was a fixed dynamic rope hidden under the snow, attached to a small pine and backed up by an even smaller single-leaf ash tree. Because of the snow on the ground, I did not notice the rope hanging from the tree nearby on the cliff and proceeded to hike out, retrieving the rope that I had fixed to the cliff edge once I got back up top and headed home. So fast forward again to November 2020. I was out hiking along the cliff, enjoying the evening sun. I spotted the rope I had missed on my earlier trip hanging from a very unlikely place. I got some friends together, Josh and Ellis, and we went back to have a closer look at this finally in December 2020. So here's some theories about this rope descent. One, a party managed to walk around the narrow and sketchy cliff band right above the final rappel here. Once they had determined they were unable to continue hiking further on this cliff band and perhaps being unable to return the same way, possibly due to fear of falling, they were forced to rappel down from the only anchor anywhere along this section of cliff. That begs the question, why would the party walk around a cliff that is obviously a dead end, risking an unroped fall along the way without suitable fall protection, only to rappel down from marginal anchors when they could have bypassed this ledge altogether? My second theory is that the rope was left from a climbing party bailout and subsequent rappel to the ground. Based on climbing databases for C&M, there are no established rock climbing routes in this area. Also, in all my time spent in this area of cliffs, I've never seen any rock climbers or rock climbing gear left behind here. Plus, the rock is not really all that conducive to rock climbing, often being quite friable and loose and or devoid of hand and footholds for long sections that are needed for climbing routes. Also, rock climbers would have been more likely to be packing 50 or 60 meter dynamic ropes that would have allowed them to easily double them at the midway point, rappel off the second rappel station, retrieve their rope by easily pulling down the double rope without leaving a fixed rope behind. Still, the longer rope found rigged to the tree anchors on the cliff was a 10 millimeter dynamic climbing rope, so it is likely these person or persons unknown had some experience rock climbing. Now, my third theory about this fixed rope is that these person or persons unknown plan to purposely descend this rock face. Recognizing they likely did not have a single rope long enough to complete their proposed route in one rappel, the party rigged the first rope to retrieve later upon returning to the top of the cliff, a second rope along to rig a second rappel, intending to leave the lower rope behind. This explains why no rigging was found on the fall line above the rigged rope midway down the cliff, as this had likely been retrieved later after these people were successfully back atop the cliff where they started. So this is all the more puzzling, really, because the party could have just used two standard rope lengths, like I said before, either 50 or 60 meters, which is 165 to 200 feet, to complete this descent of the cliff in one rappel, rigging a pull-down rope trip, thus sparing them from creating a second rappel station off a precarious and marginal set of tree anchors, although this would require carrying about 16 pounds of rope back up the Fruita Dugway Trail. Carrying such a weight is certainly doable. It seems like the party had only ropes shorter than 50 meters to rappel down the cliff, and thus committed to retrieving the first rig rope once the trip was over. They unwisely and illegally decided to leave the second rope behind, rigged to the two tiny trees on the cliff. This suggests the party was not only inexperienced in canyoneering rappelling techniques, but also unknowledgeable about rope retrievals. Although a backup tree anchor was utilized, both tree anchors were a poor choice for anchors as they were both set on bedrock with very skeletal soils, greatly reducing their root development and thus reducing their overall strength and safety. So, conclusions, questions about the rope. How long has the rope been hanging from the tree? Certainly greater than 2 years, possibly more than 5 based on its UV, faded, frayed, and general decayed condition. Handling the ropes briefly caused their sheath to fray and separate, and it literally fell apart in my hands. Because of the dry climate and lack of precipitation we have here, rigging left behind in CNM often lasts many years, so it's difficult to know how long the rope has actually been hanging here, but I would estimate greater than 5 years. Now, what did the participants do when the rope came up 8 feet short at the base of the cliff? Well, perhaps realizing that the rope did not reach the ground as they rappelled down toward the end of the rope, they were likely terrified. It is conceivable the party was not carrying ascending devices to reascend this rope and the other rigged rope above them from the cliff edge, so it's likely that they were forced to rappel off the end of the rope to reach the ground, which is a position that no rope user ever wants to be in. Many people have been seriously injured or killed rappelling off the end of a rope. Were they injured rappelling off the end of the rope? Because the rope was a dynamic rope, it likely stretched about 6.5% or so, meaning that the rope likely stretched about 4 feet of the 60 feet of rope rigged above, allowing the rappellers to rappel off the end of the rope and fall about 4 feet to the ground, thus likely saving them from serious injury. Or possibly someone twisted their ankle or their knee. I mean, really, this was a stroke of good luck for the participants, as they could have easily rappelled down to their deaths in this scenario had the distance to the ground from the end of the rope been greater. So, in conclusion here, we removed the old rope and other trash that we found at the bottom of the historic trail's overlook. And hopefully you've learned from this video not to leave fixed ropes behind for very long, to get proper technical rope training to avoid the mishaps discussed in this video. But also I want to point out too that this is the reason that we don't throw trash or other objects from overlooks. You never know who is below you. And besides trashing a beautiful national monument, you may inadvertently hit someone below, possibly injuring or killing them in the process. So I want to thank you for watching this episode of Desert Underground, and hope you'll be with us next time when we get into some longer rope descents we've got coming up. And hope to see you then. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this, and hope to see you in the desert. Thanks.